typically what we would do is we would send our drum kit to one or more reverbs that glue it together, because we want the drum kit to sound like it's a coherent whole. And likely what's going to happen is that the settings that you have for your short articulated sounds like your drums probably aren't going to be as suitable for things that you might have like chords and pads and maybe even stabs. So it's absolutely fine to have things set up differently and different sounds in slightly different environments. If you think about a studio space in itself, many studios, big ones anyway, have like a drum room, have a vocal booth, and things do get recorded in different spaces, and then naturally we add reverbs and things to them after the event. But I studied in a studio called Psalm East, which was absolutely fantastic. Had the Clash in there, Queen was in there at some point, obviously long before I was in there. But there were some of the stories the recording engineer was telling us about how they would like mic the drums up, and there was this long hallway, and they would do it there and put one mic at the end to catch the reverb. And obviously that wouldn't be applied to the other elements in the track. So it's totally cool to do that. What we're really aiming for is to glue specific sets of instruments that we want to be in the same space together. And of course, you can use the trick of using the same algorithms and just messing with the decay time if you feel that maybe something is popping too much out of the track, it's too much in its own space. You can always use those techniques to pull it together. But what you're doing, absolutely fine. And the main thing is, if you're happy with the sound of it, that's all that matters. There isn't a right or wrong. And the masterclass was more about kind of troubleshooting a lot of things that people come up against a lot and saying, look, here's solutions that tend to work to resolve any issues, as opposed to a hard and fast, you must do this set of rules. Okay, perfect. So let's have a look at this. So the idea of this was that we had 3 reverb returns set up, in this case to send our drums to. Each one of them had the same plugin on it, and that plugin had the same preset, the same mode. Literally all of this gear was pretty much the same, and all I tweaked was the decay time and how much highs I was taking out of each of the reverbs. So the longer kind of fizzier, splashier ones, I had a bit more of the high end allowed through in those. So how do I choose what goes where? Well, typically what I find works well is the higher, more splashy stuff works better with the longer reverbs, and the lower sort of percussive sounds, unless you really want to put them in a big space, the lower stuff tends to sound really nice on shorter sounds. So here's a percussive sound here. Let's just loop it up, because you'll be waiting forever to hear it otherwise. Here we are. Okay, so what we can hear is that this is going to the really short reverb. So I'll do a before and after. So what I'm looking for there is something that in this case isn't a big splashed out kind of reverb. I want something in the low mids. It's not dominating an area of the mix that tends to get over cluttered quickly, and I want it nice and short, but you can hear it's really adding something very cool to the sound. But as I go up, when I get to things like open hats or rides, I tend to send those to longer reverbs. In answer to your question, I wouldn't send any one sound to multiple reverbs in this instance, because this is just all about gluing them together. And if I've got one that's short and one that's long, there's not really much point in doing that. Now that's just a general guide. Obviously, if you want a big splashy clap, that can go long. If you want a tom drum that's got a huge reverb on it, that's totally cool. It's up to you. But just as a general rule of thumb, that's how I typically start when I'm not trying to give something a special effect that it pops out of the track. One of the things that happens a great deal, and I don't know if I've got it in here. Nope. Okay, fine. Is that we just grab an EQ and we take out unnecessary frequencies, so things that we don't need. So, for example, if I had this really splashy reverb and I was only sending my top sounds to it, you can bet your backside I can probably take most of this stuff out because it's just literally cluttering up the mix and I don't need it to be there. Now you can literally hard cut it out, or you can shelve it down. And likewise with the tops, it's not so much to clean up the reverb, but taking out the really high-end stuff makes the reverb sound more natural. If we go too high on this, like this one goes all the way up to 15k, it gets a really unnatural fizz. And the reason for that is that all your soft furnishings, like anything in a room, will absorb high frequencies. So it's very unnatural that we'd be in a space where we'd hear these ringing out. They get absorbed by anything in the room really quickly. So a bright reverb is probably getting rolled off and sounding natural 9 to 10k, and then if you want it darker, which I tend to prefer, but that again is just purely down to the way that I like my music to sound, then you're sort of talking 7 down to 5. But ultimately, cleaning up your reverb is going to come to EQing out the stuff typically from the low end that you don't need, and then setting your decay times or using a gate to clean up the lengths if they're too long. So decay time normally works, but gated reverb is a whole new world where we determine that we're just going to cut it off. So the decay might be going like this, and we just go, nope, you're going to stop there. So we get a short kind of pumping, breathing sound, but obviously we're freeing up moments of silence where the mix is clean. I've really